Greetings, it's Rabbi Box back again with Parashat Shavua. This week we are still in the book of Shemot. We are in Parashat Va'eira, Exodus chapter 6, verse 2 through chapter 9 through verse 35. And we continue from last week, in which Moses and Aaron are being asked by God to go in front of the Pharaoh and ask the Pharaoh to let the Israelites go and pray to God in the desert. And Moses is told by God that Pharaoh's heart is going to become stiff and he's going to argue, but eventually it will happen. So this is a back and forth between God and Moses and God and the Pharaoh. Moses and the Pharaoh acting on behalf of God, and Aaron is there to help along the way. And so Moses goes to Moses and Aaron go to the Pharaoh, and they say, God says, "Let my people go to worship God." And through a sequence of yeses, then changing his heart, saying no, and there being plagues, Pharaoh changes his mind a number of times. As we know, eventually there are 10 plagues which convince the Pharaoh to let the Israelites go, and then he changes his mind even again to chase them as they're fleeing from Egypt. But the first of the 10 plagues is Moses and Aaron have gone in front of the Pharaoh with his courtiers, and Moses took his staff and threw it on the ground. It turned to a serpent. The courtiers of Pharaoh laughed, threw their staffs on the ground. They turned to serpents. But then Moses goes back and says, okay, well, he takes his staff and tosses it into the Nile, and the Nile turns to blood. All the fish of the Nile die. And the Pharaoh is upset. Pharaoh says, go. Pharaoh changes his mind. Moses comes back and says, okay, well, then there's going to be another plague, and it's frogs, and the whole land is infested with frogs. Pharaoh calls them back, says, okay, I understand, I was wrong. People can go. The relief comes, the frogs go away, and then Pharaoh changes his mind once again, and then we get lice. Same thing happens. Pharaoh says go. Lice disappears. Pharaoh changes his mind, and then we get insects, and then cattle disease, and then boils. And the first 6 of the plagues are that. So we got blood, frogs, lice, insects, cattle disease, and boils. The 7th of the 10 plagues, which ends this Parsha Hashavua, ends chapter 9, verses 13 through 35. We see hail. Moses going, and huge amounts of hail and thunder destroying everything in Egypt. Once again, Pharaoh calls Moses and Aaron and says, okay, go. But then again changes his mind. And this whole time, Moses is being told by God that Pharaoh is going to be stiff-hearted. He's going to be stiff-necked. He's going to change his mind over and over and over again. And there's all this commentary as to why this is necessary. Why is it so necessary for all of these bad things to happen? Lots of commentary on this, and obviously one of the reasons is God is trying to show God's power, not just to Pharaoh and his courtiers and the Egyptian people, but also to the Israelites, so they can see how powerful God is, so that when they go into the desert to eventually make it to the promised land, even though they will complain the whole way, they will know God's power. And I just want to read the last couple of lines of chapter 9, verses 34 and 39 and 35. But when Pharaoh saw that the rain and the hail and the thunder had ceased, he became stubborn and reverted to his guilty ways, as did his courtiers. So Pharaoh's heart stiffened, and he would not let the Israelites go, just as the Eternal had foretold through Moses. So once again, we're going to go into next week's Torah portion with the continuation of the last 3 plagues. That is this week's Torah portion in a nutshell. I look forward to seeing you soon. Shabbat Shalom.